Hello and welcome, everyone. We're going to wait just a moment for more people to join us for today, but thank you so much for joining us for the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health Virtual Visit Week. As you're logging in and as we're waiting for a few more people to join us, if you wouldn't mind identifying the chat box on your webinar panel and typing in where you're joining from today. It could be city, state, country, whatever it is that you're comfortable sharing, and it just gives us a sense of who's in the audience. All right, starting off strong, we have New York. We have folks joining from Boston locally. Kuwait, welcome. Good New York contingent, welcome. North Carolina, Zambia, Seattle. We have Dallas, Texas, Berkeley, California. And for those joining still, just feel free to type into the chat box where you're joining from today. It gives my colleagues and I a sense of sort of the representation across the United States and as well the world. We have Saudi Arabia, we have North Carolina, Egypt, Waco, Texas, Malaysia, a strong New York contingent still, Los Angeles, London, Nepal, Montreal, England, Honduras, Paris, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Ithaca, New York, Boston again, Chile, Pakistan, Ann Arbor, Michigan, excellent, Nashville, Mexico City, Japan. Wow. Okay, so I've probably scrolled through a third of what everyone has contributed, and I could certainly read them all day long. But that said, it shows you kind of a representation of the folks that are joining us today as prospective students really echo what we see in our student body as it relates to representation across the country and as well of the world. So we'll get into some of that later. But to kick us off, we'll go ahead and dive into our formal presentation. So welcome to Virtual Visit Week. My name is Charlie. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions here at the Office of Admissions at the Harvard T.H. Chan School. And I'm joined by my colleague, Ruth. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Charlie. My name is Ruth Thompson. I'm the Senior Admissions Coordinator at the Harvard Chan School Admissions Office. Thank you, Charlie.
Excellent. Thank you, Ruth. And we're very excited to welcome you to Virtual Visit Week. Now, if you're kind of new to what Virtual Visit Week is, it's essentially a week of different virtual and webinar experiences that prospective students can sort of craft their own schedule to attend sessions that are of greatest interest to them. Today's kickoff is kind of a generic virtual information session about the whole admissions process. It touches on all the different degree programs, eligibility, things of that nature. And then throughout the week, our different departments, programs, Office of Student Services team will host specific webinars going into the nuances of their particular programs. So I may not go into extreme detail on maybe the exact program you're interested in, but my goal of today is to kind of show you what's available, the general eligibility criteria, and give you a sense of what the school community is like. So the first half of today, really the first 30 minutes or so, I'm going to go through slides to talk about what I just mentioned. And then the last 30 minutes will be mostly Q&A. So things that you have curiosities about, or maybe things I didn't talk about, or things that I could talk about in more depth. So we're going to go ahead and turn off the chat feature at this point, and you are welcome to direct any questions and answers to the separate questions and answers box on your webinar panel. And this just helps us get a sense of what you're curious about. Ruth may answer some questions along the way, or we might end up saving a lot of them for later. And then if I don't know the answer, we'll certainly connect you to the folks that do. So with that, Ruth and I are going to turn off our cameras and we'll focus on these slides. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. So the mission of the Harvard Chan School is really about promoting health in the communities in which we live, learn, work, and play. And that manifests itself through a variety of different degree programs and areas of study at our institution. So there's not necessarily one type of student from one type of educational background or professional background that finds their way to the School of Public Health, but we have students from all sorts of areas. So for example, you might be sitting in a classroom with someone on your left who's maybe a medical professional, someone on your right who's an educator, someone across the table from you who has a policy background. And so it really makes our school a very dynamic and collaborative place to come together to study health and public health more specifically. A little bit about our school. So we have just under 1,400 students enrolled, and that's between our master's and our doctoral programs, which makes us sort of a medium-sized school of public health compared to some of our peer institutions. Within our student body, we have just under 60 different countries represented, which makes up about 40% of our students being from outside the United States. Within the US, we have anywhere from maybe 42 to 43 US states represented. So, truly in the classroom, you'll be surrounded by people from very different parts of the world, very different academic experiences, and different professional experiences as well. The photograph here on the right side of the screen is our School of Public Health building. Well, we have a couple of buildings that are joined together, but the building centrally that kind of looks like it's fanning out a little bit is our main Kresge building. Kind of just above that building, you'll see the medical school campus where Harvard Medical School is located. And then just to the right, you'll see the Harvard School of Dental Medicine tucked in there as well. So we're very much a medical community, but we're actually located in Boston proper. So when you think of Harvard University, your mind might be drawn to Cambridge, and that's where the undergraduate program is, the Harvard College, as well as many of the other graduate schools. But we are on the south side of the Charles River in the city of Boston proper in the Longwood Medical area. Sort of outside the scope of this photograph, there are several hospitals, research facilities around. So again, it's a very wonderful place to come together to study public health. So if you're new or newer to the field of public health, this visual is a great place to begin to understand some of the differences in our programs. We offer some programs that are research focused and some programs that are professional or practice focused. Similarly, we offer offerings at the master's level as well as the doctoral level. So starting at the master's side, if we look at the practice-based degree programs, we have the Master of Public Health, the MPH, and the Master in Healthcare Management, the MHCM. Our MPH program is the single largest degree program at the school. And so I don't know the exact percentage of how many MPH students percentage-wise are within our student body, but it's the single largest program. On the research side, we have the Master of Science, the SM, at the master's level. And then at the doctoral level, on the research side, we have the PhD, the Doctor of Philosophy. And on the practice side, we have the Doctor of Public Health, the DRPH. So this is really just to get you thinking about where your interests lie. Are you looking for primarily training on the research side of things, or are you looking for more of a professional or practice-based degree program? Within our school, we have different areas of study that students can pursue, and this visual really represents more of the research-based opportunities that students have. So they have the option to pursue a Master of Science, which again is that research-based master's program in different credit amounts that I'll go over in a moment. So we have a 42.5 credit program, which takes 1 year to complete if pursued full-time. We have a 60 credit program, which takes 1.5 years to complete if pursued full-time. And we have an 80 credit program, which takes 2 years to complete if pursued full-time. You can see certain fields like biostatistics is offered in all three of those Masters of Science varieties, as well as the PhD. But you can see that other fields of study, let's say if we go down to health data science, you can see that field of study is only offered in our 60 credit program, which is the 1.5 year version. In terms of eligibility, there's different things to consider because often we get questions like, how do I know which Master of Science program to select? And in terms of eligibility, if you have a prior bachelor's degree, you are eligible to apply to our 2 year, so that's the 80 credit program, or the 1.5 year 60 credit program with just a bachelor's degree. You don't have to have any other types of work experience or educational background or things of that nature. For the 1 year program, the 42.5 credit program, we do require a prior graduate degree or significant work experience. And that does vary a little bit by department. But in most cases, they're looking for someone to have earned like a prior doctoral degree. So, for example, maybe they're already a physician or something of that nature. For the PhD programs, they also only require a prior bachelor's degree. So there's no formal requirement for students to have additional work experience or prior education. The reason that the PhD has the little star after it is because this is the one program at the Harvard Chan School that is not directly administered by our admissions office in the Chan School, but it's managed by the Harvard Griffin Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. So as a PhD student, you would very much be sitting in our School of Public Health, but administratively, you would apply through a different admissions office than ours. You would sort of be managed as a student through the graduate school itself. And so the bulk of today's presentation will focus more so on our master's and DRPH program, but I absolutely have PhD information to share as well. But just know that some of the specific admissions related questions can best be answered by my colleagues at the admissions office at the graduate school. Looking at the Masters of Public Health program, similarly, we have different fields of study that students can pursue. We have a 1 year MPH, and I'll say 1 year if pursued full-time MPH, which is our 45 credit program. And eligibility for that program is someone needs to have a bachelor's degree and at least 5 years of work experience, Or if they've already earned a graduate degree or US equivalent, then they can apply for the 45 credit program without work experience. So it doesn't have to be a specific graduate degree, but let's say you're already a physician, for example, or you already went to law school or business school or really any other graduate program, then you could apply for our MPH 45 credit program without additional work. You can see the MPH 45 is offered in a variety of fields of study. If we pivot to the right, you can see our MPH 65 credit program. And the difference here is that this is a 1.5 year program as opposed to the 1 year 45 credit option. Eligibility for the 65 credit program is a little bit different in that it requires a bachelor's degree and at least 2 years of work experience. Now, I'll say often we get questions when from prospective students saying, well, what do you mean exactly by work experience? And from a strict eligibility standpoint, we're looking at the amount of time you've worked full-time, paid, outside the context of another degree program. In most cases, it's really work experience you've completed after the conclusion of your undergraduate program. So we absolutely value and want to see everything you did while you were in your undergraduate studies and everything you did before then, but those those years or months of experience cannot count towards the eligibility. We're really looking for after your time as an undergraduate student. And if you have questions about that, please let us know in the chat. We're happy to go into detail. I suppose that other questions were asked about work experiences, if it needs to be, a very specific type of role, or if it needs to have been with a specific company. And the short answer is no. Given what I talked about a few slides ago, we really do have students from all sorts of different professional and academic backgrounds. So as long as you're able to sort of connect the dots for us in your application as to why our program makes sense for you now based on your interests and goals, there's not necessarily a linear or one path to pursuing our programs. And then last but not least for this slide, the DRPH program is really defined as interdisciplinary. So students obviously can focus on things within the program, but it's not like you are pursuing a specific field of study. You don't get a DRPH in epidemiology, as an example. It's really advertised as more broad than that. And then our master's in healthcare management is a little bit different than some of our other programs too. And this is a mid-career program for physicians and dental executives that are typically in a healthcare setting overseeing a sizable budget of about $1 million or more. So it's sort of a distance, or I'll say like a low residency type program where students come to campus infrequently for long weekend components and then are otherwise working full time. Towards the top, you'll see epidemiology and generalist have little stars as well. These are our hybrid or online options. So for the most part, the Chan School programs are largely residential, and many students pursue the residential options full time. If you're someone that knows that you cannot come to Boston or that you have to keep working full time in your location, then I encourage you to explore our epi and generalist tracks in more depth. The generalist program is 100% online, so there's no expectation or requirement that students come to campus. And the epidemiology program is hybrid. And I know hybrid can mean a lot of different things from different schools. And for us, what it means is students come to campus for 3 weeks in June, then they return home to complete coursework online throughout the academic year. Both the EPI and generalist programs are 2 years part-time in length. So the EPI has sort of two residencies, one in June of each year of the 2 year program, and the generalist is just fully online for 2 years part-time. You can't do the EPI or generalist programs full-time, so that's just something to keep in mind if you are considering those hybrid or online options. All right, so hopefully at this point I've gotten you thinking again, whether your interests are more research-based or practice-based, giving you a sense of the different fields of study we offer at the school, as well as touching on some of the eligibility. Now I want to pivot to the application process itself. You'll notice the header of this slide talks about the application process for the MPH, Master of Science, Master of Healthcare Management, and DRPH. So if you are interested in the PhD, just pause for a moment, because while certain elements of this slide will apply to you, again, you will be applying through the Griffin Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. But for our other students, I'll walk through the different application process and requirements now. So we use a common application system called SOFIS, which stands for School of Public Health Application Service. And SOFIS is really designed to make your life easier and that you apply through SOFIS, and then SOFIS sends your complete application to any school or program of public health that you are considering applying for. Not every school and program uses SOFIS, so as you are making your list of different graduate schools and programs, just check to see if they use the common application or not. In terms of what you have to send to SOFIS, this slide details some of those requirements that I'll walk through. So in terms of transcripts, any US-based transcript needs to be sent directly to SOFIS. So this is for both degree and non-degree experiences. So if you transferred from multiple US institutions to other US institutions, you would send a individual and unique transcript from every institution you attended directly to SOFIS. And I know we've seen students on with various educational journeys over the years, and I think the record I've seen for sort of different numbers of institutions someone has attended domestically has been about 9 or 10. So if you're someone who similarly has transferred a lot, or you have multiple degrees, no matter your educational journey, just make sure you make a list, because if SOFIS does not get one of those transcripts, then it'll hold up your application. So really just be cognizant of that, and also be cognizant of the time that it may take to request transcripts. Some institutions will send transcripts electronically in an official capacity. Others may still mail hard copies via post. So just kind of make sure you budget for that when you fill out your application. If you completed a degree program outside of the United States or English-speaking Canada, then your transcript acquisition process looks a little bit different. Instead of sending your documents directly to SOFIS, you will send them to an organization called World Education Services, which we abbreviate as WES, W-E-S. And essentially, WES is an organization that will take your documents and convert them to the US education system as it relates to credit hours, your grades, and ultimately the equivalency of your degree credential, which then goes back to some of those eligibility requirements that we talked about earlier. So when I said if you have, the equivalent of a US doctoral degree, as an example, we rely on the World Education Services evaluation to do that. If you go to the World Education Services website, they do have a degree equivalency tool. So even if you're not ready to start the evaluation process yet, you can at least see on a high level what your degree is equivalent to. And I think that's a great resource. And then once World Education Services finishes your credential evaluation, they can provide that directly to the SOFIS application that will get with the rest of your materials. Often we're asked if someone did a study abroad or a non-degree international experience, if a WES is required, and the short answer is no. You only have to do the WES evaluation if a degree was earned outside the US or English-speaking Canada. So next we'll talk about letters of recommendation. So we require 3 letters of recommendation to be submitted with your application, although the SOFIS application itself will accept up to 5 letters total. Sometimes we're asked if we will read all 5 if you submit 5, and the answer is yes, we will read all 5 if you choose to do that. But from an admissions perspective, 3 really quality letters are all you need. In an ideal world, it's nice if at least one letter can come from someone that's instructed you in a course. So whether that's a professor, a TA, someone familiar with your academic potential or success in the past. And it's nice also if at least one letter can come from a supervisor or workplace colleague or scenario. We understand that some people have been working for many years and they feel their 3 strongest letters may come from the workplace. That's absolutely fine. Similarly, we understand those some people are more recently out of their undergraduate studies and they feel their 3 strongest letters can come from faculty. Also fine, but just keep in mind, in an ideal world, it is nice to have a balance of both, just to get us the bigger picture of your different experiences and how you filled your time. In terms of selecting folks for writing letters, it's really important that you select someone that knows you well. And while that might sound obvious, it's really clear to us in the admissions office when someone doesn't actually know you. So think about the difference between a positive letter versus a strong letter. Your friend's cousin's relative might be the CEO of some fancy company. And while that might be an impressive title, it's really evident if that person doesn't actually know you. They can't speak to the depth of your passion for the field or why it is that you're excited to go to graduate school. So just really keep that in mind as you're making your selections. Next, we'll talk about the statement of purpose and objectives. And this is really the most important part of the application. This is the narrative telling us why it is that you're looking to pursue our program and specifically how the skills you learn in our program will help you reach your goals. The exact prompt for the statement of purpose and objectives is on our website, and it really doesn't change from year to year. So whether you're thinking about applying this year or applying in a future year, that's a resource you can definitely look at. And if my colleague hasn't already, we do have a website with a list of links that I would ask her to post that can guide you to our website, the specific requirements, and those types of things. But feel free to take a look at that at any time, whether it's this year or in future years as well. When you write your statement of purpose and objectives, one helpful thing to keep in mind is that the faculty that sit within the different areas of study will be reviewing your materials. So let's say you ultimately decide you would like to apply to the MPH program in health management as an example. Just keep in mind that health management faculty in that instance would be reading your essay. So it's important that you not just talk about public health in a very, very broad sense, but really hone in on why it is that you selected that field of study, because the faculty really want to see that you are just as excited and passionate about that field of study as they are. Next, I'll talk about the resume and CV. So we require you to submit a resume or CV with your SOVIS application. Sometimes we're asked if we have a preference as it relates to formatting or if there's a length requirement. And the short answer to that is no. Really, this is an example, or this is an opportunity for you to show us how you fill your time. So the different educational experiences you've had, the different work experiences, any volunteer, or really just anything you're eager to share with us. The only sort of tip I can give for the resume or CV is just make sure it's as clear as possible. So when I say clear, you saw on the previous slides how some of our programs do require certain types of educational backgrounds or certain types of work experiences. So it's very helpful for us in the admissions office if we have a clear sense of sort of the date ranges that you participated in opportunities, that you're accurately reflecting your prior degree experiences and those types of things. So some of it might sound obvious, but just take a read through your materials and just make sure that it's clear. Next, we'll talk about standardized tests. So the last couple of years, the school has been GRE optional. This year, we've had a change where some of our programs, for the most part, it's our Masters of Science programs, which again are those research-based masters, are requiring the GRE again for the most part. And the links that my colleague has shared or will share will link you to our test page where we detail what programs require the GRE and for which programs the GRE is optional. For the programs where the GRE is optional, we do have some guidance on our website to sort of describe the situations when it might be advantageous for someone to sit for the GRE. And for those of you that aren't familiar with what the GRE is, I apologize, I didn't explain it. The graduate record examination, and it's really a standardized test that has different aspects. There's a quantitative component, there's a verbal component, there's a written component. And it helps our faculty reviewers when assessing your application in a holistic nature. I will sum up the guidance in a general sense for the programs where it's optional, in that many of the programs at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health are very quantitative in nature. And if your undergraduate program or prior educational training did not include many quantitative courses, so for example, didn't include many or any math or science classes, then sometimes it's hard for our faculty to look at your prior grades and understand if you'd be able to handle the rigors of our graduate quantitative curriculum. So in those instances, for the program that's optional, it can sometimes be advantageous for you to take the exam so our faculty can see the results of specifically the quantitative section of the GRE, just to make sure that you would be okay in handling the quantitative nature of our classes. For the next bullet point, these are English language proficiency tests. So if you did not earn a degree instructed in English, then you are required to submit either the TOEFL, the IELTS, or the Duolingo English test. And these are different types of English language proficiency tests. They all look a little different. They have different sort of price points. And so definitely check out our website to learn sort of the minimums, because some of the tests, depending on which one you take, some of them we just have an overall minimum required score. Others we have subsection requirements. So just take a peek at that. And then also, if you are needing to take this test, just make sure you give yourself enough time, because we would need to have the scores to our office by our application deadline, which actually isn't on this slide. So I'm glad I thought to mention that. So our application deadline is December 1st. So that's the date by which you would have to submit your SOFIS application with the different requirements listed on this slide through SOFIS, which then is delivered to us. Some of our programs have slightly earlier deadlines. The MHCM has a slightly later deadline, but in general, the vast majority of our programs have a December 1st deadline. So if you have any questions about that deadline or specific elements of the application getting to SOFIS in time, please let us know. And then last but not least, the SOFIS application fee. I don't mention this because application fees are fun. They're quite the opposite. But I like to point out that the Harvard Chan School itself does not have an application fee, but the SOFIS Common Application does. And just it's really a bigger cue of when you are applying to graduate school, it's important to sit down and sort of make a budget for yourself. Because depending on whether you need a World Education Services evaluation, for example, or if you are required or choose to submit the GRE, for example, or an English language proficiency test, it's just a reminder that applying to graduate school is not only an investment of your time, but also an investment of your financial resources. So we don't want people to be surprised along the way. We try our best to be very transparent upfront. So just as you are making your list of graduate schools and programs, just be cognizant of there are some fees out there, but then also that there are some ways to help reduce the financial burden of applying to grad school. So the testing company, which is called ETS, Educational Testing Services, they administer many of the standardized tests, and they do have some resources available on their website that can help reduce the cost of taking their tests, which can make a dent in your budget for applying to graduate school. SOFIS also has a fee assistance program on their website. So if you do a Google search for SOFIS Fee Assistance Program, you can learn more about that opportunities there that can help reduce the cost of applying through their common application service as well. So again, a little bit of extra research on your side, but ultimately some of those savings can help out when applying to our programs. And also talking about funding sources and how we help reduce the cost of attending graduate school, I want to highlight and give a shout out to our Office of Financial Aid. There are different levels of support that students can apply for and receive when attending the Chan School. And some of the different buckets of funding here are outlined on this slide. So there's Harvard Chan School grants and scholarships. So these are school-specific funding opportunities that students can be considered for. As we pivot down the slide, you can also see Harvard-wide scholarships. So these are sort of university-wide scholarships based on different, perhaps donor gifts or different initiatives that are going on at the school. And then also we have a database of external scholarships that students and alumni have used in the past to help finance their education. So by the nature of it being external scholarships, this is really a resource you can keep in your back pocket, whether you're looking at our school or other schools. Sort of the one caveat with the external scholarships, though, is they may have different deadlines or different requirements than some of the Harvard specific ones. So on the next slide, I'll talk about some of the deadlines for our internal financial aid processes, but just again, keep in mind that the external resources may be different. So looking at the internal process, we have a financial aid application that typically opens in mid-December, give or take, and you will receive an email from the Office of Financial Aid. So I guess taking a step back, right? You apply through SOFIS, through our admissions office by December 1. After that time, the Office of Financial Aid sends you a separate email for their separate application to be considered for scholarships and awards at the school and university level. And you have to fill out that application to be considered for scholarships and awards. If you do not fill out that application, then our Office of Financial Aid will not consider you for those. The deadline for their application is January 8th of each year. So you have a couple weeks to fill it out. And truth be told, it is a very sort of short and sweet application because the Office of Financial Aid is able to access a lot of the information that they need from your original SOFIS application. So oftentimes students are surprised that it only took, a couple minutes, as an example, to fill out the financial aid application. So I would say just, jot down a note of the dates of that, but certainly don't stress about budgeting tons and tons of time for that piece. So I know earlier I said that the PhD programs are through the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, which is true. And so I want to talk about them a little bit, but also point out some of the differences in the application as well as funding process for the PhDs compared to some of our other programs. So on a high level, the PhD deadline is the same as the SOFIS deadline, which is December 1st of this year. And within our PhD offerings, we offer biological sciences and public health, biostatistics, health policy, and population health sciences. So these are sort of the main areas for PhD studies, which again, as a reminder, is our research-based doctoral programs. At the Harvard Chan School, and actually throughout GSAS as a whole, PhD programs are fully funded at Harvard. So the last slide that I talked about financial aid, this is not applicable to our PhD friends. You are fully funded and you have a stipend as well. So that's sort of a different funding model available for those programs. The PhD programs themselves are really advertised as about a 4 to 5 year program. Different fields of study may have slightly different timelines, but that's a general way of thinking about it. And I realized now that I think about it, I didn't say how long the DRPH program was, which is again that practice-based doctoral program, and that's a 3 to 4 year program. But again, the DRPH is not inherently funded like the PhD is. You would still apply for financial aid through our Office of Financial Aid. So that's a distinction there that I did not mention before. Within our PHS, Population Health Sciences track, we have different fields of study. So someone doesn't just get a PhD in population health sciences as an example, but they focus on areas that can include epidemiology, environmental health, global health and population, nutrition, and social and behavioral sciences. So there's sort of kind of a deeper dive to do those areas of study that might be of interest for you. We do have different sessions coming up this week, many of which are on the event webpage for Virtual Visit Week. So if you wanted to learn, more about a specific field of study as a department, or if you wanted to learn more about the PhD or the MPH or the DRPH, we do have sort of these deep dive sessions that are occurring later. So if you, look at this slide and have questions that come up, especially for the PhD programs, my colleagues in their respective offices can give you additional depth on those areas. So with that, that's a high-level overview of the school and programs, and I know we've had some questions that have been rolling in. So if you would like me to expand more on something that we talked about earlier, or maybe something I didn't discuss at all, very happy to do that. And Ruth, would you like to kick us off with the Q&As? What types of questions have come in?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Charlie, for that very informative information about the overview. It was great. So thank you so much. There is a very good question. A lot of people have questions about the DRPH. And one of them I think a lot of people might have questions from comes from Jacqueline. She wants to know, did most of the people that get admitted into the DRPH program have research experience?
Good question. So the DRPH program being more of a professional practice-based degree program, they're not looking for research experience in the same way that maybe candidates for the PhD would maybe have a research background. So I'm probably not really answering your question, but a high level, some people come into the DRPH program with research experience because it's part of their background, their interests, and those types of things. But think about it as the DRPH program isn't really preparing you to be a researcher in the same way that the PhD is. So I would say that, like anecdotally, a lot of people are coming into the DRPH program, with a prior master's degree, at least 6 years of work experience, and they're really looking to sort of build upon different leadership experiences they've had to sort of lead and take a public health organization to the next level. And of course, I'm being broad, I'm generalizing in those types of things. So I would say, if you have research experience and if you're interested in research, that's wonderful. But I would say it's not a formal expectation of the DRPH program to specifically have those types of experiences.
Thank you so much, Charlie. The next question, a very interesting question. This person would like to know what groups or centers exist at the school for people who have been startup founders. That's the general question the person has.
Yeah, for sure. So the school has a lot of different research centers, as does the university overall. I admittedly don't know of a very specific example to share off the top of my head with startups and founders. I guess one thing that does come to mind, which isn't so much a center, but it's more of an opportunity, is the Harvard Innovation Lab, which is called the Harvard iLab for short. And maybe, I don't know, Ruth, if it's convenient, if you could share a link perhaps in the chat for the iLab. This is a I was gonna say office, but it's really a center, I guess, or an area around the university where students across the different schools and colleges can come together to sort of share ideas. So my sort of classic example is, let's say that you have an idea for, let's say, starting I'll make up an example, like an app that measures like a healthy habit, maybe walking or calories consumed in a day, something generic like that. Your expertise might be in the field of public health, as an example, but maybe your expertise isn't in like programming the app or marketing the app, or or doing other things of that nature. So you can collaborate with students from other parts of the university. Maybe there's a business student who's looking to develop their expertise in marketing, or a student who's studying programming or computer engineering who wants to come together to help create this app. So it's a collaborative place where students can launch ideas, bring them to fruition, and it's a very exciting place. Visually, when you walk in, I mean, I've never worked at Google, but I imagine it's what it would look like working at Google. You walk in, there's whiteboards everywhere. There's bean bags. There's places to come together to dream and collaborate. And so it's a very dynamic place. And I don't know if that answers the spirit of your question, but that's what comes to mind for me when I think of like startups and entrepreneurship and those types of things. So hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you so much, Charlie, for that. There's another question I think a lot of people have questions about, and not a lot of people like email us or call us about this question. The person's wondering what the admissions committee is looking for with an overlooked public health essay that we have within the application. The person wants to know, are you looking for our research, interests, or abilities to describe a public health problem in the short space provided?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll take that question and expand it to sort of the larger level. So, a really tricky thing about our application, as I would assume other applications, is that you do have limited space to describe things. So your admissions essay, has a character count. The overlooked public health problem question has a limited character count, and really, there's not a right or wrong answer. I mean, we want to get to know you through your application. We want to know what it is you're passionate about, what you're excited about. And in some instances, it's really hard to be succinct, right? Some of our short answer prompts are maybe just a couple sentences, if that. So I wouldn't stress too much about trying to craft, what you might perceive to be like the right or wrong answer, but just answer what it is you're passionate about. What are the public health problems that you want to tackle? How do you want to make the world a healthier and happier place, and more equitable for all? So sorry if that feels like a non-answer, but truly there is no right or wrong way to do it. It's just as long as you're answering the prompts, which again might sound obvious, but you'd be shocked how many essays Ruth and I have seen that where people don't even come close to answering the question at hand. So as long as you're answering the question, you're speaking to your interest and passion. That's just the main piece of advice I can give for those types of questions on the application.
Thank you so much, Charlie. That was great. The next question comes in that I think a lot of people will have this question. The person wants to know how flexible the requirement for the MPH 45 is in terms of if you have a bachelor's degree for certain fields of study where you need that 5 years work experience. The person wants to know if they have 4.5 years of work experience at the time of matriculation, if that would be sufficient.
Good question. Yeah, so when we say that a program requires a certain amount of years of work experience, we're really looking for you to have completed that work experience at the time of matriculation itself. So you may fill out the application when you're still finishing the work experience, totally fine, as long as you've reached the necessary amount of time by the time you would matriculate. So in this person's case, if they would have 4.5 years by the time of matriculation, then they would not yet be eligible. So they would need to wait the following year until they would have at least 5 years of experience, if they otherwise only have a prior bachelor's degree. And again, that's for our MPH 45 credit program. So thanks for that question.
Thank you so much for answering that question. The next question is very interesting. This person wants to know why the MPH 65 Global Health is not an option when it's available as an MPH 45. And I'm also going to add something they didn't. There's also a 2-year Master's of Science and 80 credit in Global Health and Population.
Yeah, good question. So different departments offer different types of degrees at different credit levels. So I'm not sure I know the exact reason why every department doesn't offer sort of, each different type of degree program. It just sort of historically throughout the years, some departments have expanded and they have more course offerings. Like just anecdotally, our biostatistics department is quite large. They offer a lot of different options, but then other departments are quite a bit smaller. So if you look at like our nutrition area, for example, at present they only offer the PhD, while that's obviously a huge contrast from our biostatistics department that offers, the Master of Science as well as the PhD. So it just depends on the department from year to year. I will say though that if you are interested in an area that doesn't exactly align with the type of degree program that you're interested in, you can still take electives in that area. So for example, if you're, let's say, in our MPH 65 credit program, and let's say you land on and I'll just make up an example here, like health management as an option, you can still take global health courses as an elective option. And I think one of the links Ruth shared earlier, the prospective student resources link, that takes you to a page with our different curriculum guides. And the nice thing about the curriculum guides is not only do they highlight sort of the core of what you would study within a particular program, but it also gives you a sense of how many elective offerings you have, which really speaks to the latitude you have to take classes in other departments at the Chan School, but also you can take electives across the university as a whole. So you can cross-register with other Harvard graduate schools, as well as locally with MIT and with Tufts here in Boston and Cambridge. So you have a lot of flexibility in crafting sort of whatever makes sense for you and what aligns most closely with your interests and goals.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Ashley has a question about, she's a professional PhD student working full-time and interested in applying for a part-time or online professional program, not research, for the MPH. She wants to know, is a 1-year MPH in epidemiology, 45 credit, a good fit for her?
Sure, good question. So I have a couple of thoughts that come to mind. So our MPH and EPI, which again is the hybrid program, and our MPH Generalist, which is the fully online program, those are only offered in a 2-year part-time format. So they're really designed for people that are, not in Boston. You certainly could be in Boston, but it's, you don't have to be in Boston frequently or at all, depending on the track you select. And it's designed for people that otherwise are working full-time. Students at the Chan School are not allowed to be enrolled in another degree program at the same time as ours. So if someone is actively enrolled in a PhD program at another institution, they could not do our part-time program at the same time. So it's really designed for people that are working full-time, not people that are otherwise studying in other degree programs. And I'm happy to answer more questions about that if folks have any. But hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you so much. And the next person has a question I think a lot of people might have too. This person has a non-US MD degree, which I'm thinking would be an MBBS or MBCHB, with 5 years of experience, and which is confirmed through the World Educational Services Evaluation. Is that person required to take the GRE? The person did not put to which program the person will be applying. So I thought that'd be a good question. I know you touched on it earlier about the GRE requirements this year, but would you mind going over that again, Charlie?
Yeah, certainly. So the GRE is only required this year for the majority of our Masters of Science programs. So that's the SM programs across the school for the most part. I will say for the PhD programs, you should check the admissions office website for the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, because again, since your application does not come directly through our office, I don't want to speak to their exact test requirements. But for the MPH, the GRE is optional. For the DRPH, the GRE is optional. And for our Masters in Healthcare Management, the MHCM, it's also optional there. So generally speaking, if you're applying to the Master of Science, the research-based masters, for most of our fields, it is required. So hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you very much. It is very helpful. I think there's another question that a lot of international medical students wonder about. This person is applying to the MPH EPI program, and the person wonders if we're interested in the USMLE step 1 through 3 scores as far as standardized testing.
Yeah, you're right, Ruth. That is a question we get a lot. And you do not have to submit that with your application for our program. So that's not something you would need to upload to Sophis. Sometimes students ask if they want to share that, can they, or if they have other types of tests they want to share. And if you want to detail on your resume other types of test scores that you've taken in the past, you're welcome to do so, but it's definitely not required to share that with us.
Thank you so much. The next question I think a lot of people have too, the person wants to know, is there a minimum number of words for the statement of purpose and objectives? I know we have a maximum, but the person's wondering if there's a minimum.
There's not a formally published minimum, and that's actually a really interesting question. I would say that really your essay, you should really aim to be around the maximum. And if you haven't started writing it yet, you may find that I guess a sort of informal piece of feedback we hear for a lot of students is it's really difficult for them to say all the things they want to say in the word limit. So I guess you should just aim for the word limit in general. But if you feel like you're able to convey your message and answer the prompt in fewer words, you certainly are able to do so. But I'd say that just from the students I meet with, most people really do meet the limit, and they still feel like there's more that they would like to say.
Thank you, Chai. I found that oftentimes two people are asking me, can I add more words in the limit? So thank you so much for explaining that question.
Yeah, and actually, I'll jump in with one more thought too on that. So some parts of the Sophis application are like little word boxes where you type your answer in, and those answers do cut you off at a certain word or character limit. For the statement of purpose and objectives, it's actually a document that you upload. So like whether it's like a Word doc or a PDF or something like that. And so that doesn't formally cut you off at the word limit, but I would really encourage you to adhere to the word limit because like every year there's always someone who submits like a 5 or 6 page statement of purpose and objectives that's way over the word limit, and it's just not a good idea to do that. So please, please, please check yourself on your word limit when the system isn't monitoring that for you.
Thank you, Charlie. Next student has a question about, as an international student, is the person eligible to pursue a dual degree program? For example, a Master's of Public Health in conjunction with another degree at Harvard University.
Yeah, great question. So we do have some limited dual or joint degree options available at the school. At present, we have a dual program with the Harvard Law School. So if someone is in their first year in the JD program at Harvard Law, they can apply to add our MPH, and that's the 45 credit program in either the field of health policy or in global health, and that they would do alongside their law training. And then separately, we have a program where current medical students in a US or Canadian accredited medical school can do our 1 year MPH program in a gap year post clinical. So for most students, that's a gap between their third and fourth year of medical school that they can do our 1 year MPH, and that's the full time on campus version. So you could not do the generalist or epi tracks as a dual MD student. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Charlie. And in a moment, I'll put in the chat the link to that so people can see more information about that. I hope that would be helpful. So the next question, which someone has, is the person wants to know, what is the World Educational Services to which you are referring, and is the GRE equivalent to transcripts?
Yeah, good question. So the World Education Services, it's a separate company that does credential evaluations for degree programs completed outside the United States or English-speaking Canada. And the reason we ask applicants to use this service is because, as you probably saw on the very first slide, we have students matriculating to our school from 60 or so different countries. We get applicants from many more than that countries, and our faculty are not necessarily familiar with the educational systems in each and every one of those countries. And so World Education Services will take your transcripts, mark sheets, and diplomas and convert the outcomes to the US educational system. So it shows us what your marks are to the US grading scale. It shows us what the equivalency of your credential is, and it's a really helpful tool for our faculty in evaluating your application in the holistic way that they do so. So that's the first part of the answer. And then the second part, I believe it was asking if the GRE was related to grades. Was that correct, Ruth?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so the GRE is a separate test. So it's a test managed by an organization called Educational Testing Services. And if you do a Google search for GRE test, you can read all about it. But it's essentially a separate test that you would take if required, or if you decide to submit it if your program is optional. That gives our faculty reviewers a sense of different levels of proficiency across the sections. And so the GRE test has a quantitative section, it has a verbal section, it has a writing section, and that helps our faculty, in most cases, really look at your quantitative proficiency as it relates to how you would navigate the quantitative rigor of our graduate curriculum. So it's not really related to your grades. It just, again, goes into the holistic bucket of all the different materials you're submitting to us with your application.
Thank you so much. There's a person who wants to know, just for clarification, does the person's transcripts from an English-speaking Canadian school such as Ontario need to submit? What does the person do with this? Would they need to do a WES evaluation, or would they need to do what the domestic students in the United States would do in terms of this transcript entry?
Yeah, great question. So if you attended an English-speaking Canadian institution, your documents can go to Sophis directly. If you attended sort of a bilingual Canadian school, maybe half your curriculum was in English, half was in French, as an example, I would ask Sophis specifically that question because Sophis sort of decides what they will take directly versus what needs to go through West. It's actually one of like their determinations, not so much ours at the Chan School. I've seen many Canadian schools come directly through Sophis without a West evaluation. I think, and maybe I'll have Ruth chime in too for perspective, but really the Canadian documents that I see come through World Education Services are things that are almost exclusively in French. But Ruth, what have you seen?
I've seen the same thing as you, Charlie.
Okay, great. Yeah, and hopefully that helps. But if you have any very nuanced questions about that, Sophis's website can definitely provide clarity for you.
Thank you so much. And this is another question we get often about the IELTS, the English Proficiency Exam. The person is wondering so the person went to the website and saw that they need to provide the TRF number to Sophis. And the person wants to know, is it, so would the person send it directly? What is the process? I think the
Yeah.
person is wondering why is it not necessary for them to send the score directly to Harvard, the testing service itself?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll answer that, but I'll also like expand further on tests in general with Sophis because it can be a little tricky sometimes. So when so high level, when you're filling out the Sophis application itself, there is a place where you can detail tests you've taken, the scores you've received, those types of things. If you simply fill out that section, then what you're doing is you are reporting your unofficial test scores to us. So we will see in your application whatever it is that you've self-reported to us. And that's basically your word for the tests you took, the date you took it, and the score you earned. For our review purposes, we can start with what you've given us to begin our process, but ultimately we do need official test scores. And so what makes something official, whether it's a test score or a transcript or anything like that, is it means it comes to either us or Sophis directly from your school or directly from the testing agency. So as it relates to your question about the IELTS, the IELTS tests, that number you're referencing, the TRF number, that's sort of like a test ID number that's associated for you with the test that you took. And you provide that to Sophis to help link your official score from the testing agency directly to Sophis. And it's a similar logic with the GRE. ETS will send your official score to Sophis and that kind of thing as well. But that is necessary if you are needing to take an English language proficiency test or if your Masters of Science program requires the GRE. We will need the official tests in those instances. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you so much. I think we have time for one more question because it's 7 minutes until the hour. I don't know, Charlie, if you'd, I was going to say, do you have any final words of wisdom for people, or would you like to answer one quick question before you get to that question?
Sure. Let's see if we can squeeze one more in, and then
Okay.
I'll kick off with some final thoughts.
Okay. This person has a question that a lot of people have. Do you require transcripts from a year abroad program that were part of your undergraduate degree, but not shown on your undergraduate transcript?
And you said abroad, like outside the United States.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, great question. So, since it's a non-degree experience outside the United States, you do not need to do one of those World Education Services evaluations as mentioned. However, since it's outside the United States, Sophis won't take it directly. And so what we generally ask you to do for like a study abroad transcript is just to send us an email, and our admissions email here is on the screen, admissions@hsph.harvard.edu, and just attach your study abroad transcript as an attachment, and then we will add it to your Sophis application. Please send it to us after you submit to Sophis, because if you send it to us before, we'll have nowhere to attach it to. So just timing can be helpful there. But that's what I would recommend for that. And that's a great question that we do get. So thank you, Ruth.
So Charlie, I was wondering if you have any words of wisdom, a final piece of advice for people as they're submitting their applications?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first off, I want to say a huge thank you for joining us today. I know it's very busy time of year, and I know people are joining us from all different parts of the world and time zones. So thanks for getting up early, staying up late, or just joining us midday. We really appreciate you joining us. But also that this is really a kickoff for the whole virtual visit week. And so, Ruth, I'll ask you again, and maybe you did this earlier, but just paste the link for the virtual visit week landing page into the chat so it's front of mind for people. But this session is really to get you thinking about the school and the programs. But the sessions throughout the week will do deep dives into specific areas of study, degree programs, opportunities for summer internships, and things of that nature. And so, really, my piece of advice is, I'm so glad you're here to kick off the week. But this is really just the beginning of our opportunity to engage with you, answer questions, show you what our school community is like. And we're really excited to connect with you. So you please feel free to reach out, ask questions, those types of things. But I also want to highlight different sessions that are going on for the rest of the day. So depending on your schedule, you're welcome to join us. Many of our school-wide sessions throughout the week will be recorded. Some of the department-specific ones may or may not be recorded. So it just depends on the department itself. But later today, we have, just after this actually, we have a session that's going to be highlighting summer internship opportunities for current undergraduate students. Later this afternoon, Eastern Time, we have our Career and Professional Development Office talking about the ways in which they prepare students for practicum experiences, job experiences, can talk about career outcomes as it relates to the type of companies or roles that our graduates move into. And then later today, we have a session put on by our Office of Financial Aid that primarily focuses on information for domestic US citizens or permanent residents. Tomorrow, there will be a separate session for international student financial aid, but that's just a taste of some of the different things that are coming up this week. So with that, I'd say be engaged, ask questions, take advantage of the week. We have student panels coming up later. Some of the department sessions will have faculty involved as well. So if you want to get a sense for further details on what the classroom dynamic is like, there are just many different ways to be engaged with us. So with that, thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you again later this week. But signing off from Boston, I'm Charlie, joined by my colleague Ruth, and thank you again for your time. Take care and goodbye, everyone.